Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a kind young princess. Her beauty surpassed the beauty of all others in the land. Her youth, kindness, and beauty, however, were the source of many of her troubles. She was hated and envied by her stepmother, stepsisters, and two evil witches who wished to steal her youth and beauty. As a result, she experienced many terrible things. She was made to work her fingers to the bone as the family servant. She was also poisoned with an apple, sent into a deep sleep, and imprisoned in a tower. Her only true friends were a dog, mice, 7 little middle-aged men, and the forest animals who helped her with the household chores. The princess would often sing and daydream about a life different from the one she was living. She longed for someone to take her away from her troubles. One day, her dreams came true. The princess was rescued from the tower by a young, handsome prince who arrived on horseback. Thereafter, they were married. And can you guess what happened next? They lived happily ever after. Or so it seemed. If this story sounds familiar, it's because it's a mashup of some of the many fairy tales that we heard as young girls. A beautiful princess gets in trouble, a handsome prince shows up to rescue her. And the fact that we all know that life is not a fairy tale does not, however, prevent us from wanting a handsome prince to show up, nor from wanting to live happily ever after. But in order to get a more realistic perspective, the story should go on to reveal what happens to the prince and the princess after they marry. For example, the prince might grow tired of the time it takes the princess to get ready every time they have a royal event to attend. It irks him that he is always having to wait around for her. On the other hand, the princess may get annoyed that after he takes a shower, the prince leaves his towel and underwear on the floor of the royal bathroom for the servants to pick up. It would, of course, no longer be called a fairy tale. It might look more like a current-day reality show exposing the ups and downs of a relationship. It's also important to note that fairy tales that we grew up with perpetuate the idea that the princess can never be completely happy until she meets and is rescued by the prince. In addition, there's an implication that the princess doesn't solve or can't solve her own problems and instead relies on the prince to solve her problems for her. That's where the rescue comes in. This is also true in the film industry in general, and particularly with action films where the hero saves the day by protecting or rescuing the woman that he loves. And we know, of course, that fairy tales and movies are make-believe, and that in real life, you are sufficiently intelligent and capable of solving your own problems. Although happily ever after is a nice concept, we know it's not what real life involves. And so instead, we should use phrases like happily more often than not, or happily every now and then. It would be more representative of actual life. The next thing I want to discuss is that blissful feeling of falling in love. When we're at the beginning of a new relationship, we are in a state, oftentimes, of falling in love. And there's a blissful feeling that accompanies that you experience, and that it's not like anything else that you've ever felt. That feeling, however, is only experienced when you're in that process of falling in love. Once you are in a relationship, understanding that you won't always be in that state of falling in love forever will lead to having a longer and happier relationship. Some people don't seem to understand that once the newness wears off and the reality of routine sets in, that feeling is gone. And they don't realize that, and they begin to think that maybe they made a huge mistake because they don't feel that same way anymore. But remember, that's just at the beginning. That's something that you feel when you're falling in love, not when you're already in love. And so they may give in to temptation or go astray or break up with their partner because they don't feel the same way they felt right at the beginning. So this wreaks havoc on what they've worked so hard to build. And it's important to understand that marriages and relationships in general will have ups and downs throughout the life of the relationship, and you're not always going to feel that same way that you did when you were first falling in love. It's also important to know that those ups and downs that people experience ultimately serve to strengthen the relationship. So keep in mind that without the downs, you never fully appreciate the ups.